a representative on the New Zealand Young Writers Festival program, speaking on the reality of fantasy establishing lore and plot. Please welcome Brendan Couch.
Hi everyone, I want to point out my name is spelled right there, so don't get anything wrong about the last name, it is the furniture. I've just been presenting here, so you can start when you're ready. I'm Brendan Couch, I'm a second year English major and writing minor at University of Otago. I've been writing short stories and that sort of plot since about 7 years old. Just like, those weren't very good, granted, but getting off to a good start there. And I'm going to be talking about my first sort of coherent, completed novel-length draft. These are most of the chapters that I've got for my editing process. So essentially, the working title I've got is called Chronicles of Amphasvar Solki. It's a medieval fantasy genre novel sort of similar to Game of Thrones. And it's based on a big prophecy in which this primordial being from the beginning of time comes back to destroy all of existence. It's very dark, very lovely. And it's going to be a trilogy based on 3 stages of prophecy. Yep. So this is essentially, these are the stats for it. I started on the 7th of November 2013 and finished the first draft on the 11th of April this year. And it started as a hobby project to keep me busy after the year 15, but as you can see, that got out of hand very quickly. And it took about 521 days to finish the first draft. Essentially what I'm going to be talking about is the creative process and how I work with it. So like making it start with setting, coming up with like working with fantasy sort of themes, the factors of writing, and then editing, which is just the biggest delight I've had to work with in my life. So essentially the first part I'm going to go with is the working with setting. So it's essentially why to start with it, how to actually get started, and then making sure that you can adapt to it. Because there are a lot of important aspects about setting that can really influence how a fantasy novel works. So it's a sort of key important thing to actually start with it and have it prepared before you get started. So essentially the first method I had, like right at the start, was to come up with geography, which I use an online dictionary, but I found this on the internet called the macaroni method. That's remarkably effective at getting a very good sort of map going. So essentially the intricacies of it is that you should make regions and stuff like that so you can have government social interaction as a whole big dynamic to it. So starting with this is important and making sure you can develop it as you go. The next part is wildlife. These are some commissions from animals in my novel. And essentially the significance of it is that one of the big things about wildlife is it's so memorable that if you do it well, people will remember it, and it makes it that much more entertaining. A lot of it's been done before, but if you just use that as an inspiration and add your own flair to it, it makes it that much better. But make sure you don't break reality too much. Reel it in to make it a bit realistic. The next part is religion and magic. You don't have to use these in fantasy novels, but they can be a very rich source of information and like inspiration for it. So religion is the big one that I've got in my one, but you can also use magic such as alchemy, religious magic, or people shooting fireballs from their fingertips, that sort of thing. It's a very useful one. The other one, speaking of which, is fantasy themes, universal ones that we always use, like dragons. Essentially the thing is that I found being 100% original is almost impossible these days because of how much established lore you've got. But that's one of the important things, is that you can use it as a basis for your own work and make something really new and more interesting with it. So essentially, these are all trolls. This delightful fellow is from my book, the one at the bottom right. They all share a lot of safety features, that sort of thing, but they're all different. So essentially, you start with a basic idea like the troll. You pay homage to other works, so like they're all very similar and for a good reason. And then you sort of own it. You make it your own by adding little details and making it interesting. Now, this lovely fellow, this is Smaug and Smaug, both the same character, believe it or not. And the thing is that they have pros and cons. Like they can develop and go on. So the reason they're good is they're popular for a reason. They take strain off your reader to imagine what it's like, and they can make a plot very memorable when done right, but if they're done wrong, it can be bland, it can seem like plagiarism, and it can be very clumsy. The next part I've got is about planning ahead with your novel. You want to know more or less where you're going to start with, but you don't want to have a 100% guaranteed idea. So if you have sort of knowing A to Z and some things in between, rather than knowing A through Z, every subset of Roman numerals and everything else in between it, essentially being flexible and making sure you can deal with roadblocks, sidetracks, and everything is very important before you get started. The other thing is representation and diversity, because a lot of the time in modern media we see the same sort of cookie-cut characters, like all straight, all white, all that sort of thing. So one of the benefits of it is that people can read your novel and see these different characters and find like a personal identification with them, which is why I try to do it a lot, even though it's controversial with a lot of like conservative people. You should really use it. Now the other thing is dealing with depth. You don't want to make it short, you don't want to make it boring. You just want to make sure that it's well written, if you kill liberally like George R. R. Martin, you have to do it reasonably. Like, there has to be a reason for it, and you want to make sure the death of the character's death is in ratio to their significance. Don't write a 5-page long thing about their death if they were in one scene. And then this is another one, bringing the vision to life using commissions and artists. The good thing is that it can help you see how others have interpreted your work and change it if need be. It's also very good because it helps struggling artists, struggling college students who get through the day by paying them to do things like this. And you have to respect them, of course, and do it properly. The other thing, inspiration versus determination, I've had this scene happen to me several times while I've been working on it. Essentially, you need to deal with both. You need to have inspiration, but you also need to just struggle through it, just be stubborn and work through it. Reread everything, make sure you use both in equal degrees as is necessary. And this actually relates quite a bit to the next part, which is editing, which I refer to when this is hell on earth, because essentially it's one of the biggest struggles of looking at your work and finding everything that's wrong with it. So I've had a lot of things where I use peer review to get people to look over it, and I have to make sure that I dedicate myself to my work. I just sit there, do it, focus, and also know that the first edit is not going to be your last, far from it. You have to manage your time properly. The next part is that in editing, you have to realize you're going to make mistakes. You have flaws, but don't despair over it. Essentially, make sure you just work with it, you realize that you're going to have to fix things. Do not trust spell check, by the way. In fantasy novels, that thing is the worst invention possible, especially if you've got all these foreign words and stuff like that, so don't use it, and make sure you look out for plot holes and all that sort of thing before you finish. Which leads on to this next part, which I'm not an authority on because I haven't gone to publishing yet, but from what I've seen, you need to make sure the manuscript fits what the publisher asks for: clarity, coherence, cohesiveness. And you will probably have to edit again, I'm sorry to mention that fact, but they'll probably ask you to edit slight things in there, and make sure you get a good deal with royalties. You don't want to be screwed out of a bunch of money because the publisher is cheap. And then, essentially the conclusion I've got here is that these are more guidelines rather than actual rules. This is based on my experience. The creativity is one's own, so make sure you just use it your own way. Be prepared for a very long journey, and as a cheeky plug at the end, look out for Chronicles of Angus File being published, hopefully by the end of the year, if I'm lucky.